Good morning, everybody. My name is Victoria, and I am a fine art artist, illustrator, and art teacher, and welcome back to another episode of Art Tutorials. Today, what we're actually going to talk about is all about hatching. So, what is hatching? How many different types of hatching there are? How do we actually create hatching? How to use it? How to apply it? And things you want to keep in mind to help you get a better understanding of hatching and also being able to master it. This series will actually be broken apart into 2 videos, so make sure you watch part 1, which is this video, and also part 2 will be the video coming out next. I'll help you guys walk through the basics step by step, along with what materials you need to use, and also learn how you would actually apply hatching to different forms and shapes, and also create different textures and surfaces and things to keep in mind. Now let's grab our pencil and paper and let's get started. First, what we'll need is some kind of paper. I use Strathmore Sketch paper. You can use any type of paper that you have at home. And the next thing we'll actually need is an eraser, some pencils. You can use mechanical HB pencils or just the traditional regular HB pencil. And we also have a brush to blend if needed. So let's ask ourselves, what is hatching? Basically, what hatching is it's a way to fill in shading, and there's many different ways of filling in shading, but hatching is the one that I use the most, and we're going to get a better understanding of how to create hatching. So, in order to create hatching, you would actually need to draw a line or a stroke upwards or downwards, depending on what you prefer, and you would actually align each of these lines side by side in order to create a shade. And remember that hatching usually is a single direction hatching. The moment you have more directions, we would actually call it cross hatching, but we'll jump to that very soon. The next thing what you want to know is we have 2 main types of hatching. The first one is straight hatching, and then the second one is curved hatching. Straight hatching would mostly stay in a straight line, while a curved one would curve depending on how the shape is formed. So most of the hatchings that we're drawing here are straight hatching. So as you can see, the top row is mostly vertical or horizontal, and then you can either start from top to bottom or bottom up, or from right to left or left to right. And then now I'm creating diagonal straight hatching, so you can actually go from top left corner to bottom right corner, and then bottom right corner into top left corner, and then this is vice versa, so it's the opposite of what I just did earlier. So now this one particularly, I'm going top right corner to the bottom left, and as you can see, I'm keeping the hatching quite close together in order to create a shade or kind of like a patch of tone. So I've also created a special little drawing exercise for you guys that you can download in the description below, and this is going to help you practice your straight hatching. The step-by-step is actually pretty straightforward, so all you have to do is fill in the following shapes that you see there, and make sure that you follow the arrow. So the arrow actually indicates the direction of the hatching that you have to fill in the shape. So make sure you kind of follow the arrow, read the instructions on the top right. It should be pretty clear. So with this exercise, it would actually help you practice to get a little bit more familiar with hatching, and also kind of being able to control the spacing in between the strokes of your hatching, and also having different directions and tilts. Now, the next thing what we want to talk about is curved hatching. So when it comes to curved hatching, what it is that it's not straight anymore. we are going to curve it into somewhat like a C shape over here. So as you can see, I'm following the direction of the arrow, and I'm gonna try to keep it as consistent as possible, as even as possible, and the line still kind of sticks together like how the straight hatching does. So this one I'm just doing the opposite direction, and as you can see, sometimes there will be slightly bit more spacing, white spacing in between, but you can actually go back in order to fill in a little bit more properly. And here we go, we have the curved going downwards to the left over here, so it's kind of bumping up at the center over there and at the bottom, and then here are very different types of curved hatching while we kind of compare them with the diagonal and then also the vertical and horizontal straight hatchings. So slightly bit different, but we have a lot of different varieties that we can play with. So here's another fun little drawing exercise sheet that you can print out. Also, download is in the description below. So for this one is specifically for curved hatching, so make sure you kind of follow the step-by-steps, and it's very similar to the straight hatching, so you do have arrows to kind of help you and indicate how the hatching would actually curve. And with that, what's going to happen here is that you can actually draw the curved lines ahead of time and just divide the cylinder or any other shape that you're filling in into smaller sections, so then that way it prevents your lines to curve in a direction that you don't want it to be. So you want to make sure that you keep the lines pretty consistent, pretty even. So now let me show you what cross hatching is, or cross hatching is. Cross hatching is basically a combination of two single direction hatching, but they have to be completely different angles, so they can't be all the same one, or else it would be considered just a single direction hatching. So for the first direction here, the hatching is moving downwards, so top to bottom, and then what we'll actually add next is let's add from the right to the left. And whoa, sorry that it kind of blurred out there, but here is an example of cross hatching over here, and I'm kind of going back over to it so that it kind of smooths it out. So now this one is from right to left, and this is our second direction for our hatching. So this is a very basic cross hatching, and there's multiple different ways of doing cross hatching. So you can have two directions, you can also have something that has three directions. So let's start with a diagonal hatching. What's a diagonal? A diagonal hatching. And we're gonna fill in from top to bottom, and then now we're going to do another diagonal hatching, but this time from the right side to the bottom left. And third direction shall be from top to bottom. And here we go, we have our three different directions, and then combining all three would give you a three direction type of cross hatching. So as you can see, it's slightly bit more blended. It gives it a different feel and a different texture for sure, and depending on how smooth you want your hatching to be, you can add as many different directions as you want. I have more drawing exercise and printouts on my Patreon, so if you guys are interested, please feel free and check out my Learning Fuzz tier. You guys can get other exclusive constructions to help practice your proportions and all of that, and also other fun activities, and also vote on polls on future constructions that you want me to create or any other type of drawing exercises. So next, what we're actually going to do here is that I'm going to show you the difference between a very close and tight patch of hatching and a more spaced out patch of hatching. So as you can see, the left one has a more tight one, and then the right one is more spread out per stroke and per line. And here we're going to do a cross hatching with a tighter patch, which has less white spacing in between each other. And we will also create one that's a little bit more spaced out. So just let me finish adding the 3 directions there. Or am I adding more? No, I'm not adding more. Okay, and what we're actually going to do here is the more spaced out version. So as you can see, it gives off a very different feel and also a very different texture. So this would be very similar to if you would want a very stylistic way of cross hatching, and then this is what you usually see in, for example, dollar bills or like etchings and ink sketches, because you do see the cross hatching a lot more, and it's a lot more visible, it's a lot more obvious. So next up, what we're actually going to talk about is layering. So layering actually comes into play very importantly when we are building different value tones in our drawing, and how would we actually add that by using and filling it in with hatching. So we have 4 different layers over here, just to give you examples. So let's start off with the first layer. So first layer is probably not as smooth, and then with our second layer we are going to create a cross hatching with 2 layers. So as you kind of see, this one already got a lot darker than layer number 1. And let's do one that's 3 layers over here, and you can actually add cross hatching in order to make the layering darker. So sometimes if you use only a single direction hatching and then you add more layers to it, it makes it darker though, but sometimes adding a separate direction of hatching would actually make it even more darker, just because the reason is that the different direction is filling in the pores or the tooth and texture of the paper a lot better, where the first direction of the hatching kind of missed and couldn't really fill in very well. So that's why if you do a combination of different directions of hatching and layering it that way, it makes it a lot darker. Now I'm just kind of adding the different directions by using little arrows so that you guys can see which direction we used for the 4 different layers there. The next thing what we want to talk about over here is surface and also texture. So right now what I'm actually creating is a very smooth surface, so I'm going to start with a single direction hatching, and I'm going to add my cross hatching. And as you can see, the spacing between each stroke is very, very close. So barely any white spacing in between. And with that, it would actually create a smoother patch. So this would actually be very good for any smooth type of surface. You would probably want to use curved hatching if you were to do something that's a little bit more rounded and organic, like a portrait, but this would actually be very nice to fill in if it's something smooth and flat, like a table surface or anything that's like metallic and it's like smooth. So this is a very good way to fill in your drawing, and using cross hatching and smoothing everything out and patching it all together. Now another type of texture that you can create with hatching is a fur-like texture. So as you can see with the hatching and with all the arrows I'm drawing here, what you're actually doing is you're spreading it out like eyelashes, and you would actually layer it from the root, and you would build a second row, and then a third row, and then a fourth row. So you can actually build as many rows as you need, and this is how you would actually layer and literally grow the hair. It's actually pretty fun, and now it looks nice and fluffy. So what we're actually going to do next here is that if you were to apply the, not the hairy one though, but like the smooth hatching onto a curved surface, and how you would actually use the cross hatching over here, I drew a somewhat of a bowl-like shape, and as you can see, when you want to fill in the hatching, you have to kind of follow the shape of the object. So that would actually help create a better resemblance to the shape. And when you're adding your cross hatching, as you can see, I kind of changed the direction just a bit slightly though, but it still kind of follows the curvature of the original shape there. And to help smooth things out, I usually like to use a brush to blend the first few layers. The key idea is that as long as you have like one layer, you can actually start blending, but I sometimes add more than just one layer of hatching before I blend it with the brush. And now, as you can see, I'm adding more layers to make it a lot darker, and I kind of choose where I would want to create the darker values and shadows. And I also drew some arrows over here just to kind of show you the combination and the different directions that I used for this particular shadow and cross hatching. And you kind of add as you go, and as you can see, the more you add as you layer it, the smoother it would get. And here I go again, blending it, smoothing everything out, and then I would actually go back in order to add more to it. So sometimes when you blend, you do take off a little bit of the graphite, so that's why you kind of have to go back and put on just a little bit more so that it kind of brings its nice dark tones again. So now what we're going to do here is to be able to control the length of the hatching. So you can actually create shorter hatching or longer hatching, and this makes a big difference depending on like what you're creating. And it's good to have a practice of variety of different lengths of hatching, and to be able to actually change as you fill in helps out a lot, because depending on the shape and the area that you're filling in, you want a lot of flexibility to be able to do really skinny for very narrow areas, and also very wide spread out areas, and you have longer hatching. The other thing that you probably want to practice and be able to do while hatching is the orientation of the hatching. So being able to actually rotate the hatching. So as you can see, I drew a basic circle over here, and what you want to do here is that, as you can see, the hatching is slowly tilting clockwise, and as you can see, it slowly rotates and turns, and as you can see, it keeps the rotation very consistent. So everything is pretty even. You want to be able to rotate it without deforming any of the lines. The lines stay pretty straight because this is still considered straight hatching. And as you can see with the arrows, those are the varieties of different angles and orientations there are. I also do have another hatching exercise printout sheet on my Patreon for Learning Fuzz tier and Student Fuzz tier. So feel free to check it out, because this is very helpful to help you practice your rotation and kind of getting a better understanding of the orientation of your hatching and shifting and adjusting as the shape changes so that the direction of your hatching would change. So now, just to have a short summary of what we learned so far today, we've learned what is hatching and how to create hatching. We also learned the two main types of hatching. We have straight hatching and curved hatching. We also learned how to use and create cross hatching. We also learned a little bit about the spacing in between each stroke of the hatching to create different texture and different styles. We also learned how to layer our cross hatching, or even if it's just a regular single direction hatching. We also learned that hatching, you can actually create a lot of different textures, different surfaces, like hair or something that's a lot smoother, like a bowl or other smoother objects. And we also learned that being able to change the size and the length of the hatching plays a big role on how flexible your hand is, and also being able to rotate and change the direction orientation of your hatching. And that's it. That's it for the first episode of All About Hatching. So we've learned quite a bit of stuff, and hopefully this will be very helpful for you guys and help you improve your hatching skill, your shading in skill, and also just kind of getting to know more about hatching, because there's probably not a lot of info out there, and it's nice to kind of know exactly what to keep an eye out for. And there's so much experimental things that you can actually do to help you improve and also kind of master shading and be able to create varieties of different textures, different surfaces, different values, and just generally having a better control over hatching. Thank you again so much for watching my newest art tutorial video, and I hope you all enjoyed it, and thank you so much for commenting below the video and asking questions. It was really nice to kind of chat with you guys and kind of learning what you're kind of struggling with, and so that I can kind of help you out and give you some tip and advice so that it would make your drawing experience and kind of learning a lot more simpler and more enjoyable. So yeah, I want to also thank all my students, and then this would be actually a very great video lesson just to kind of like back up the things that you learned during class too. So I hope this is also very helpful for you guys as well. And if you want more content, more drawing exercises, and just want to learn even more, there's plenty more stuff on my Patreon, so please make sure to check that out. And also, if you like this video, please click the like button, please subscribe to get the latest updates when I release a brand new video, and also please comment below if you have any more questions or if you have any other suggestions on what other art topics and drawing tips and advice I should share with you guys. So yeah, I would love to help you guys out. Wishing you all the best and happy practicing, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Up next is episode 2 for All About Hatching. Take care, have a wonderful day, bye!